I genuinely have a question for you watching this video. I'm about to play a jingle. In the comments, please tell me what comes to mind when you first hear this. If I had to guess, I think a lot of you are going to say the Dynasty Warriors series. Tecmo Koei, the creator of said series, have created many popular and loved games such as Nioh, Fatal Frame, and the Dead or Alive series. Arguably though, their most famous titles are the Warriors series, of which have been some of my favourite games to play ever. Tecmo Koei, who I'm going to call TK, have made many warrior games that have taken inspiration from many sources. Dynasty Warriors, which is based on the novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Samurai Warriors, based on the Sengoku period in Japanese history, and the more recent release of Hyrule Warriors, based on the concept of sharing with Nintendo. Another popular but not as successful series is the Orochi series, where history, fiction and mythology from everywhere come together to create a complicated and overpopulated storyline. Some of the less successful warrior titles include the Fire Emblem Warriors and the Dynasty Gundam series. I've played all of them and I've really enjoyed each one. Well, almost all of them. But I was getting a little bored of the traditional fighting with swords and spears, etc. Gundam obviously helped change things up, but it didn't feel like enough. That was until I discovered a series they made that hasn't been touched since their second installment. Tecmo Koei once dipped their toes into the waters of sci-fi, and attached to their pinky toe was the Crimson Sea series. The first installment of the series was on the original Xbox and I never got to try that one, but I was able to play the second one recently, and that's what we're going to look at today. Crimson Sea 2 is a game that follows the story of Sho, the saviour of the world who has to save the world again by fighting against a dominating alien threat known as the Menace. Before we get into it, I should stress that coming into the second installment as the first game I try does mean I'm obviously missing out on information related to the plot, so bear that in mind as we go on. The game starts with an intro sequence of Sho saving some soldiers from the Menace. See, you can tell he's the main character because he has anime hair and wears less armour. When the scene ends, you're offered a tutorial. Okay, let's try it. Oh god. Alright, well, let's get started. The first tutorial tells you about the game's features. Literally tells you about the game's features. And then has a quiz at the end. Ugh. The rest, however, are practical lessons. So going down the list, the controls are: using the left stick, you can move around. The right stick rotates the camera. X to jump, square to shoot your gun, triangle uses your melee weapon, circle activates your overdrive ability, select brings up your menus, R1 locks onto enemies, L2 changes your current gun, and R2 slows down time. The controls will also change depending on the situation you're in. For example, X is to jump, but when you're locked on, X becomes dodge. The tutorials will go into detail about what and how controls are affected in certain states, but it will also tell you about some of its mechanics you will use in battle, these being the blade, gun, Neo Psionics, time extend, and the overdrive mechanics. It sounds like a lot, and it is, but they are easy to learn and easier to pull off. The blade, though I'd call it a spear because it's 90% stick, is your melee weapon that can hit multiple targets at once. You can perform a 4-hit combo with it, but there is a flaw to using the spear related to its mechanics design, which we'll get to in a second. Sho carries 2 guns with him at one time, the Vulcan, a weak rapid-fire rifle, and the Legion, a slow but powerful shotgun. My favourite of the two because that, both of which have unlimited ammo but need to recharge, and will when they're not being used. During the battles, enemies might drop items for you, one of which is Viper rounds. Picking them up increases the power of your currently equipped gun, and the properties of the bullets, and it will last until the ammo bar is depleted. Enemies might also drop something called Origin. No, not that one. This is what you use to upgrade your weapons and powers. Occasionally you might also find rations ranked 1, 2 and possibly higher, and these will heal you when you pick them up. Neo Psionics are abilities you unlock as you go through the game. Once all 3/3 of your MP gauge are filled up, pressing circle activates the power. Your starting power makes you invincible and you can regen health by harming enemies, their pain being your pleasure. The second power you have is the time extend, and there are 2 ways to activate it. If your combo meter reaches 30, then you get 3 seconds of time slowing down, but you can activate it manually by using 1/3 of your MP gauge and pressing R2. Doing it this way lasts 5 seconds. In this mode, time slows to a crawl and you can attack units regularly, teleport to them with melee attacks, or you can hold square to go Devil May Cry on their asses. Finally is Overdrive, and this is where the flaw of the spear comes in. Once you upgrade the spear to level 2, you unlock the Overdrive maneuver. This allows you to extend your move list. If you hold the stick in the opposite direction of the enemy you're fighting, then your combo will end with an attack that will affect enemies in different ways. Then pressing the square 0.3 of a second after makes Sho shoot the enemy. However, the flaw comes from the input command. In the traditional Warriors games, you had 2 attack buttons, one that performed a regular attack, and then a second that ends the combo and affects the enemy in a certain way, depending on when you press the second button. You could also rotate your character as you were fighting to take on crowds better. Here, you've got the single melee button and you have to use the stick to do the combo ender. So trying to rotate your character while trying to melee enemies that are behind you is almost always going to make you do a move you didn't want to and leave you open to damage. Not a huge problem, but it can happen often and becomes a nuisance. And this concludes the tutorial part of the game. Now back to the story. Oh yeah, there's a story. Let's have a look. So, you're thrown into the first mission. You fight a small number of enemies and the objective is to simply kill. Once you reach a certain point, you find a soldier who's been infected. Your boss on the radio orders you to kill him, but because Sho is such a great guy, he uses his power to slow the infection and brings him back to base to get treated. Oh, I'm sure this isn't going to bite us in the arse later. Spoilers? I don't know, I didn't play that far. It's a bit of an odd experience to have a load of info dumped on you, and then very little opportunity to put it into practice. You then get a short recap of the first title. Wait, hang on. Is that meant to be a pun? One man show? Then back to the present. Sho is being scolded for being sentimental, and Sho, because he's such a great guy, isn't having it. They then get interrupted by a distress call coming from a Thundercat named Ud, saying that she's found a weapon to use against the enemy, but is also being attacked by the same enemy, known as Langlaic, before being cut off. The commander and her tits then reveal the plan to attack the Menace Nest, to cockblock them and reduce their breeding rate in order to gain an advantage on the enemy, and that Ud's rescue will have to wait. She gives you a short guide of the base and tells you to explore it while the teleporter is being prepped to take you to your next mission. The base is small and mostly empty. You have 2 robots you can visit. One is a shop and the other one is where you save the game. The transport room, so you can explore the levels freely. The common room, where you could find people who offer side quests. The infirmary, which for the most part is a plot point for side plots. The lounge, which is full of characters who might be from the first game, and they allow you to watch FMVs and tell you information about the previous game. Yes, tell me, who am I? Finally, there is the training room, where you can replay the tutorial. You're free to explore the base however you want, meet the inhabitants, buy some stuff, hear their stories, and view their odd fashion choices. If you want to go straight to the mission though, you need to visit the doctor. She asks you to buy a med kit for her because she's too busy, and this furniture won't stare at itself. She gives you the money, and after you buy the med kit and give it her, the next mission is ready. Head back to the main room and use the navigator to get the shortest tutorial ever. Then you see the mission screen for the first time. You can view the difficulty and the rewards for doing the mission. There will also be key missions as well, that you can only do once you've met certain criteria. So far, this hasn't felt like a traditional Warriors game. It obviously has some features that made its way into the Warrior titles later, but this game has an increased emphasis on them, so it feels more like an RPG, at least outside of combat. Let's do a full mission and see if anything feels familiar to a Warriors game. Choosing a mission gives you a short briefing and a clue as to the type of mission it would be, in this case, a retrieval. And it also gives you some tips. In missions, the HUD is easy to understand. You've got your health, ammo, MP gauge, but what's interesting is you have 2 maps on screen. You greedy bastard. The big map shows the entire layout of the level, and the small map shows you where enemies are in relation to you. Then of course is your bragging rights information, how long it's taken you to complete the mission, your highest achieved combo, and the amount of menace you've killed. Now that I'm in a full mission, I can look at the main attraction of the game, the combat. Comparing it to the Dynasty Warriors games, it's noticeably quieter, though that could be because we're in early levels. Using a spear and a gun is an unusual but welcome change. It does change the way I would play these type of games, but there are some things that are irking me about it. After a Google search, I found that there aren't any additional weapons, so this loadout of spear and 2 guns could get stale quickly, especially if you personally have a preferred weapon choice. I did accidentally discover there is a second character you can play as called Fiene, maybe? And she uses different weapons, but I don't know how far you have to play until you unlock her. One of the regular features in the Warriors games is the combo meter. Getting a high count meant better bonuses for killing enemies. Here, the combo meter fills your MP gauge and could give you a time extend, but it's a very harsh window of time you have before the combo resets, making it difficult to get a time extender in the first place, and the smaller the combo, the smaller the MP gauge fills up. To a minimum of fuck all. You, as an individual, might be able to find and develop ways for you to counter this issue. For me, it was taking a few swings with the spear and then using a shotgun blast to try and hit something out of reach. You could also guess that's what the Vulcan is for too. Another feature unique to this game is the interactive environments. In some missions, you may have to use a switch to activate an event in a level. In this case, turning the power off to gain access to a locked location. Cause that makes sense, I guess. There will also be regular events like ambushes where you have to kill all the enemies before you can leave the room, but primarily you'll want to complete the main objective of the level as fast as you can and as stylish as you can. At the end of the level, you're ranked based on your performance, and getting an S will give you a bonus and a sick pose. At least, that's how it is for side missions. You need to complete some of them in order to activate the key missions which advance the plot, but they aren't just necessary grinds that slow your progression, they can contribute to other activities in the base. For example, completing the mission where you have to retrieve a data disk allows this scientist to start paying you for killing certain monsters. For science. So everything you do contributes to something, even if it's just making your character stronger. Before I finish this video with the key missions, let's talk about the presentation of the game. The graphics, great stuff. The cutscenes look really good and push the limits of the PS2. Gameplay graphics are pretty good too. The frame rate is very smooth and the models are expertly crafted, and the effects during fights gives it that pizzazz you would expect to see in a regular TK game. The sound effects, on the other hand, I'm 50-50 on. There's very minimal sound effects that only play when you hit or shoot something, and I think maybe this is intentional. Keeping the theme of an eerie, dark and hopeless looking future, the occasional silence does portray a sense of unease at times. Which is fine, but I feel as though more could have been done with it to highlight the atmosphere. Maybe a bit of show panting after a fight, maybe after a fight and he's got low health he groans in pain. The occasional distant roar could be nice, even just a scream of a poor unfortunate soul you couldn't save. Okay, be honest, how many of you just sang that Little Mermaid song just then? The music sets the tone better, even though the music sounds unfinished. I'm not even certain the composer knew what they wanted for the music. It changes speed and rhythm so much for no reason, meaning it comes across as chaotic and unorganised, like a child with a sugar rush. The music is more present in certain levels when the action is frequent, but it's better to show rather than tell you. Listen to how everything sounds in the data retrieval level. Now compare that to the extermination level. Granted, the change in tone fits the level, but the music often ruins it by implying action is happening when it's actually a bare room. Finally, there's the voice acting. It's okay. Characters only talk during cutscenes and the rest of the time it's text you need to read. When characters do speak though, it sounds more like a rehearsal than a serious effort. Speech sounds flat, there's very little emotion or inflection, and sometimes it sounds rushed.
Another city has been wiped out by the menace. We need to change our approach. They have a nest deep in their territory where they're breeding. We must find this nest and destroy it. If we can stop them from breeding, we just might have a chance. Good luck. Sho, this is not the time to be indulging in pointless sentimentality.
No, this is the time we need to stick together.
This combined with the almost absent sound and Sugar Rush Child music, altogether still make a minor issue for the game. And it's easy to look past, even easier when you're in the fight of a mission. In the key missions though, it's slightly more noticeable, as these missions are where the plot advances, meaning more moments of speech, with drama, comedy, whatever it is you can expect, with music that doesn't quite understand what's going on either. In key missions, you might also get a chance to try out a new objective type. In this one, you need to explore the area and exterminate 8 of these things. Now yes, I know some of you are going to say they look like gross dicks, but the name of the enemy clearly has anus in it, so it's a gross butthole. Don't you know your alien anatomy? Once they're all killed though, you get to fight your very first boss, a giant murder turtle. Looks cool, but not as cool to fight. Avoid its tentacles and shoot them to disable them, then unleash a bullet bukkake on its face. But watch out for its flame breath, like real turtles have. After you get your results, another sequence plays where male Seer appears. He introduces himself as Viol, the enemy of Langlaic, son of Isildur, and 26th king of Arnor. No wait, hang on. That's Aragon. He establishes Langlaic as the leader of the menace and gives a cryptic warning to Sho. Yeah, I don't know what any of this means either. Sho tries to talk to Commander about what happened, but I accidentally skipped the scene because I saw text boxes and tried to advance it like every other text box in the game, but it ended up skipping. From then on, the game would play the same. Do missions to get money to buy items, Origin to get stronger, and watch the side stories unfold at the base, and stare at some arses and titties as the plot develops. Crimson Sea 2 is a pretty decent game. It plays more like an RPG dungeon crawler than a Warriors game, but I'm not faulting it for that. It's a refreshing change from TK games, and it's nice to try the same format in a new style. The game isn't without its flaws, and they might become bigger in number and intensity as the enemies get stronger, but from what I played, there is a lot of fun to be had here, new powers to unlock, and if you're a fan of the Warriors series, you might like this even more. I'd give this one a go, especially if you're looking for something that plays like a Warriors game, but without the constant combat. And that was Crimson Sea 2. Thanks for watching everyone, and remember, you're always welcome at the Spectrum.